Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our first virtual panel through the Power of Plus. We're so excited to be having this important conversation today with four incredible women who are really changing the plus size fashion industry every day, as they have been for the past decade and more. So for those who don't know me, my name is Gianluca Russo, and I'm the founder here at The Power of Plus. I'm also a fashion and culture journalist, and I've written for everywhere from Teen Vogue to Glamour to Nylon and more. I launched The Power Plus about 2 weeks ago because in talking to my friends and other colleagues, I found that there wasn't a space where we could go to have these really in-depth and important conversations within the community that still need to be explored. So The Power Plus really serves as the platform for us to have those.
Hi everyone, I'm Shamara. I'm super excited to be moderating this panel with Gianluca and to have four incredible women from the plus size fashion industry here today. I am a multimedia journalist who is super passionate about amplifying voices from marginalized communities, including this one. So I'm really pumped to be having such an important conversation, especially during this time. Before we start, we want to let you know that if you have any questions for our panelists during this conversation, please submit them anytime during the Q&A function. We'll be answering as many as we can at the end of the panel. Now, to introduce our panelists, first we have Gabi, who is wearing this amazing dress here on the left. Gabi is a style blogger and designer whose mission is to create a movement of body positivity and unapologetic confidence. She has led a 7-year design partnership with Swimsuits for All and has also launched In Style Magazine's monthly plus size column in 2011. She's appeared on The Today Show, Good Morning America, and MTV, and has accepted the esteemed Trailblazer Award given by the Trumpet Foundation. Thank you for being here, Gabi.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Next, we have Kellie Brown, the iconic Kellie Brown, who's a marketing maven, a lifestyle influencer who has been featured in Glamour, Teen Vogue, Who What Wear, and more. She's the creator of And I Get Dressed, a global network where stylish women from all walks of life can see themselves reflected. Kellie is also a consultant and has expanded her brand into YouTube and more recently TikTok success. And I love what she's wearing as well. Thanks for coming on today.
Having me. I'm so excited about this.
Of course. And so then our third panelist is Liris Crosse, who is dressed in this amazing snakeskin dress that we're obsessed with. Liris is a model and plus-size fashion pioneer who has been featured in American Vogue, Essence, British Cosmopolitan, and Vibe. Dubbed the Naomi Campbell of Plus for her killer runway walk, she has done campaigns for Lane Bryant and Sue Stewart, and is the 2017 Full Figure Fashion Week Model of the Year, among many other esteemed accomplishments. She's the creator of Life of a Working Model Bootcamp and author of the book, Make the World Your Runway. We're so excited to have you on today, Liris, and the book is right there for all of you to see and purchase right after. And our final panelist for today is Kristine Thompson. Kristine is an LA-based plus-size fashion blogger behind Trendy Curvy, a fashion destination she created in 2013 for curvy women. She's been featured in major publications such as People's Style Watch, Glamour Magazine, Essence Magazine, and more. In addition to Trendy Curvy, Kristine is the founder of Kin by Pristine, a modern clothing company serving up timeless pieces in sizes 14 through 26. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kristine.
Thank you for having me.
So our topic today is how Black women are fighting the racial divide in plus-size fashion. Obviously, this is a very important topic and a very timely one. What many people don't know is that Black women helped lay the foundation for this industry dating back to the 1960s and 70s, leading the fat acceptance movement at the time, which has since morphed into what we now know as body positivity. As the first curvy supermodels began to rise in the 1990s, however, Black women were often pushed aside and erased from all the work that they were doing. That didn't stop some of them, like Angelica Morton, Mia Amber Rose, and Tokara, from pushing forward. However, even to this day, Black women still take a backseat in this industry, despite the clear facts and evidence that none of this would exist without them. So today, we're here to talk about how these four women are fighting against this racial divide and erasure, and how we can all aid in the battle against it. So Gabi, I thought we could start with you. You've been in this space over a decade now, and so much has changed in that time, and you've done so much. But how have you personally seen the industry, the plus size industry, change over the years in terms of racial diversity?
Yeah, honestly, and Liris can speak to this more, I'm sure, but I don't think it's changed much at all. We've seen so much progress when it comes to, I think, size inclusivity, especially since I started 10 years ago. It's like night and day, though we still have a lot of work to do. But I think ultimately, so often, like the status quo and all these corporations that are usually owned by white people, there's only, you kind of have to choose between marginalizations, right? It's like, oh, we have a Black model in this campaign, and oh, we have a fat model, but she can't be both. Like, you got to choose. So you might have Ashley Graham in a campaign and she might be alongside a Black model, but it will be a thin Black model. It's so rare to see someone who has the intersections of both. And so that being said, within the plus size industry, I feel like there's been so much focus on size, and rarely is there a conversation about the intersection between size and race. And so, yeah, I have not seen enough progress at all when it comes to racial diversity and racial inclusion in the plus size world. I think it's definitely getting better, but it has not moved as fast as other things like race. Like, I've seen progress in terms of racial diversity in the straight size world and in the beauty world, but not in the plus size industry as much. And so I think there's definitely a lot of work to be done there. And I think in the last couple of years, like post, I think what we've seen Rihanna do with Fenty Beauty and Savage Fenty has been really inspiring. And she's really led the charge recently on seeing kind of people who have multiple marginalizations and like intersections of identity in her runway shows and in her campaigns. And that's been really amazing to see. And I think because of that, I've seen a shift since that. But overall, yeah, not enough whatsoever.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear from you, Liris, as someone who's had a prolific career and a significant experience in this industry. What was it like as a new model in this industry, and how has your experience as a Black woman evolved over the years?
Well, as a new model, I would say I came into the industry really young, straight out of high school. And when I first started modeling in Plus, it was actually the more mature models were working more because it was more geared towards a Midwestern stay-at-home mom. And now, I mean, we see the industry is showing us so much diversity as far as age and as far as size. So it's definitely progressed a lot. But as a Black model in this space, it's just been exactly what Gabi was saying. It's like you take these steps forward, but you still haven't like broke through the glass ceiling. And it's almost like a vicious cycle, because if there's only but so many spots where they'll use a Black model, so you only have but so many opportunities to get a certain amount of a paycheck, then the notoriety of the job, and then where is that client gonna go to? They're usually gonna go to maybe like 2 or 3 agencies in New York that have Plus models. So then you're leaving out all of the other Black Plus models who are at sometimes boutique agencies, smaller agencies, and they're not getting the same leverage. So you'll continue to see like the same Plus models of color be used, which is a great thing. Trust me, we want to see our sisters working, but for us to be able to see diversity with different looks, you just don't see it. They usually find their one person and they keep using that person over and over and over again. Not only that, we still have the divide of the look of what they want to use. A lot of times you have a Black model, and I'm sure this happens in the influencer blogger world as well, where they'll have someone who looks more racially ambiguous or light skinned, and then they'll have someone who looks of an African origin. So you still in America have a divide of just the Black woman in Chicago or Georgia who feels like, okay, it's good they use her and it's good they use her, but what about me? So there's still so much diversity that has to be shown within our market. Whether it's bloggers, influencers, models, we need to show the thread of diversity and the beauty of Blackness that exists out there. And don't even get me talking about hair. Most of the time we're wearing wigs, most of the time we're on set and people aren't able to do our natural hair, or they think our natural hair isn't done. It doesn't look done enough for them. So working in this space has been a challenge over the years, but I just continue to show up.
I love that. Kristine and Kellie, you both started your blog around the same time, and for both of you, a major inspiration behind doing what you do is you wanted to see the content that, you know, wasn't out there, so you decided to create it yourself. What has your experience been like in the industry over the years? Kristine, you can start.
I mean, my experiences have been mostly positive. I will start by saying that. I think social media has opened up a whole new world to all of us, in that we've been able to connect with women that look like us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be connected. We've been able to relate on a level that we would not have been able to relate to otherwise. So it really has, I mean, for me personally, social media and my platform has changed my life, because I see myself and other people that share my same sentiments. On the other hand, though, there definitely has been some difficulties, you know, some of which have recently come to light with recent circumstances, with the inequalities that we face in exposure and pay, and just being seen, just being seen as a viable influencer. And it has created some really interesting challenges. And aside from that, not only being seen, but being the token and being the only one, you know, it's like we want to be seen, but we also don't want to be the only one there when we show up. So it's been a very interesting dichotomy, and one that is not always the easiest to navigate, and to talk to brands and to share how we feel in these certain situations and convey it in a way to where they understand it. But overall, it definitely has been a positive community with a great deal of challenges.
I love that. And how about you, Kellie?
I think I would agree with everyone. I think my situation is unique in that I was coming from like a brand side, like PR, marketing, and then becoming like an influencer. So being a part of a lot of conversations before being a full-time influencer, you know, you just wouldn't believe how brands process us. Even with me in the room, even with me making decisions, you know, I wasn't an assistant, I was a senior level person who was telling people what we should be doing. And even at that level, it was just sort of befuddling a lot of times. When I would be casting something, putting, you know, 3 dark-skinned girls or brown-skinned girls, and being told that it wasn't diverse enough, which was code for it's not white enough. You know, it really, like, I feel like I just was armed with a lot of sort of information when I joined the blogger space. So like I started And I Get Dressed in 2012-ish, and knowing that, it made me sort of, one, it's just disappointing because no matter how great you are, no matter how consistent you are, there's a deficit in terms of your ability to just be, you know, like you can't just be interested in fashion, just be interested in beauty, the home space, just be preppy, just be edgy, just be all the things that we allow white and non-Black POC women to be. You're always filling the Black space versus being whoever you are as a creator. So with that in mind, it sort of informed my decisions on like how I presented myself, like how I aimed to stand out, but also how I aimed to pull people along with me with who I suggest, or who I could introduce or whatever, as the same thing had been done for me many times. We are all, you know, the influencers on the panel, at least, because we do the same job, or have all like done that. Hey, do you know Gabby? Hey, do you know Kristine? Like, and Gabby to say, hey, do you know Kristine? Do you know Kelly? Like, and all, we have to do that for each other. So I think it's kind of a hard pill to swallow, very honestly, and that we can have, you know, incredible experiences, and we've all been incredibly blessed with the opportunities and the idea that we can make money doing this. But I always say, you know, I don't want to just be sort of like grateful to be here. I am, however, I'm going to look around the room and make sure I'm not the one playing myself. You know, I'm not the one to be, you know, accepting the least amount of money, not reading the contract all the way. All these things we have to do to sort of protect ourselves, because we will be the most taken advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a really great point there, talking about, you know, bringing in other women, mentioning other women to brands, because so often they pick, as Liris said before, kind of the same Black women to fill that slot. And so it's important to have that community behind you. And, you know, Gabby, for instance, your various collections over the years have been so popular, from, you know, your swimsuit designs to others. But when working with all these different brands, behind the scenes, what's kind of the conversations you're having with them regarding representation of Black women? And what has been the response from brands in terms of that when you have that conversation?
Well, to Kelly's point, when she said that, I was going to bring this up and like throw it to her too, because I've also heard these conversations, and it's disheartening, because you hear how brands, like, I've been on the receiving end of tokenism, but then I've also been in the room when you hear the people in these brands talk about casting and the way they refer to human beings. And this isn't just with us, this is with any, you know, entertainment business. So it happens to actors, singers, any talent. But the way they think of talent is really dehumanizing, and the way they speak about us. And let's just say I'm known as difficult because I'm constantly pushing back to brands. I'm constantly calling them on their shit. And I'm not known as easy to work with because of that. And it's just a part of it. And it is hard, because I think as women in general, you're always seen in a certain light when you quote unquote complain, right? And then add to that being a Black woman and being seen as angry or hard to work with. But yeah, suffice to say, I'm constantly pushing. I know you will see it hopefully in like the casting that I have had control over, diversity in the campaigns that I've done, and constantly referring, to Kelly's point, referring brands to other influencers. It's frustrating. Even when I was working at InStyle magazine, constantly trying to get Black indie designers on the page, getting pushback there, but also like getting Gibri and getting Zili for She on the page, and like showing that there were, you know, indie designers who were out there who were catering to plus size women. I actually chose to leave that job, partly because I didn't feel like I had enough control, and like I didn't like where the page was going. And when I left, they were really upset with me, and they were like looking for someone to replace me, and I recommended so many other Black influencers and bloggers, and everyone I recommended, they were like, she doesn't have the right look, like she's not right for us, or she's not right. And so it's constantly like being up against a wall when you're trying to get things done and trying to help create change, but there's only so much we can do. And if people are inherently racist that you're talking to and trying to convince to change things, like, they're not going to listen. And again, unfortunately, with the exception of Prem, where I obviously, along with Nicolette, did have control, all you can do is push back. And I think now, because of what's happened just recently this year, people are finally open to listening, and finally like, oh, maybe you're not difficult, maybe you're trying to help us. But yeah, the conversations that I've had in private are just very disheartening and frustrating, to say the least.
Well, I'm so glad that you've pushed through that, Gabby. I have to say, I'm so inspired by everything that you've done over the years. And as someone who, you know, you're a light-skinned Black woman, you recognize your privilege as someone who is lighter skinned and more palatable to brands. You've still made sure to push like all of your sisters to the forefront and to include them in everything that you do. Is there like a certain rubric that you follow to know when it's time to walk away from an opportunity, because it's a difficult tightrope to walk, because you want to be included in the space, you want us to be represented, but also you don't want us to be misrepresented in a way that, negatively affects the community. It's definitely a tightrope that you have to walk.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't have a rubric or anything. It's definitely just a gut check. I've definitely said no to many opportunities. I've turned down things. I've canceled contracts based on how brands have represented us and themselves. Just in the last few weeks with everything happening, I lost out on probably, I don't know, like $40,000 just saying no to people because of how they've behaved during this situation. So it is, I think, about knowing when to walk away, when to say no, when your integrity kicks in. And I have not been perfect at that by any means. I think it's hard when you come from, a marginalized place to say no, right? It's like you're like excited to be accepted. You're excited to have a brand wanting to work with you. And especially early on in your career, when you don't have that power, you don't have that name recognition, it is hard to stand up for yourself, and you might not just have, you have to pay your rent. So I don't blame anyone for having to work and saying yes to certain brands if they need to. But yeah, I just take it on a case by case scenario. I talk to my friends in the industry. I talk to my, my close people and do a gut check with myself and like, does it feel okay continuing to work with this brand? Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. And I think, yeah, I don't know. There's no scientific answer. Like, you just have to kind of go with what feels right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that, because I'm sure other people have had, those sort of internal conversations with themselves. So
yeah.
You also brought up Prem, of course, which we will get into a bit later. But there are so many other, indie Black-owned plus brands and size-inclusive brands that often don't get the same exposure, the same funding, and there's a lot of challenges there that aren't often talked about. And so, Kristine, your brand is fairly new, but you've had a lot of success for it. Of course, on TikTok, we see you blowing up every day with your different videos. But what would you say have been the challenges in creating this brand from the ground up until now?
Yeah, I mean, creating a brand of any kind is an incredibly difficult and ambitious undertaking. And that's especially true in the fashion industry. Like you said, I am fairly new. I launched my brand in October. So, but during that time, I've learned an incredible amount about the behind the scenes of what the fashion industry is. And frankly, they do not cater to small startup brands like at all. They are a business, of course, so they operate based off of mass production. But because of that, a lot of smaller brands do not get access to certain manufacturers, certain resources, fabric suppliers, even down to threads sometimes, because we do not meet the minimum requirements that they require to work with them. And so I took on the challenge of learning how to sew so that I could have more creative control over what the items look like and what they felt like, because obviously being a plus size woman myself, that's incredibly important to be able to represent that in the clothing that I present. But even with that, and being able to talk to them in a way that in which they understand, it's an incredibly difficult undertaking. And even when you can work with these manufacturers, you're hit with premiums that are ridiculously priced because of the fact that you're small. And on top of that, you don't even get the attention span as some other brands that they're working with would get. So it is a very archaic and older way of doing things, and it's incredibly difficult to make clothing. It's incredibly difficult to make plus size clothing, and to be able to, if you are someone who cares about quality, who cares about your end consumer, and is not just trying to sell products that are trendy and that are fast, it is a tremendous undertaking.
Yeah, I can imagine. Gabi, you've also had your own line with Nicolette Mason, Prem. It was an amazing, trendy line that I have a couple of pieces from. What was your experience like building that out and trying to get funding?
I mean, the experience of Prem in general was super positive, and it was amazing. It was like one of the best times in my life to just learn as much as I learned running a business. To Kristine's point, it's not easy, and there's so many things you don't know going into it, but I feel like I learned a lot during that process. And Kristine and I recently talked, we like Zoomed or FaceTime just about how hard it is. It's really, really difficult. And, you know, what you're up against is so many things, including if you're trying to raise money. And so, which we did. So Nicolette and I tried to fundraise, and we had a lot of interest and a lot of buzz, honestly, but ultimately, you know, I can't say definitively why we weren't funded, but I do know the stats around who does get funded. And so it's like, I think 2% of women founded companies get funding, 1% of Black founded companies get funding. And so when you have a co-founder who is both of those things, and it's just difficult. We're in the room almost 99% of the time with white men, trying to convince them why fat women want clothing and need clothing, and why we're different than Eloquy, why we're different than Lane Bryant. They just don't get it. They're like, oh, you have clothes. And so trying to really convince them of that was tough. And I only can imagine how much harder it is for people who don't have the visibility that I have and that Nicolette has, and that don't have a white co-founder or a white passing co-founder. And we have a ton of access between the two of us, and between our agency, like, we are still super privileged, and even we weren't able to get that funding. And so that, I think, only goes to show how much harder it is for people who are truly independent and doing it from scratch and aren't influencers. And it's just like, unfortunately, the VC world is like, I don't know, not great. There are stories after stories after stories about how difficult it is for Black people in general, let alone Black women, let alone fat Black women, getting any kind of money. And like, you can see that there have been a handful of plus size companies to receive funding, and many of them led by thin white people, some led by thin white men. And so I think that says a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's the other factor of, you know, even when you're able to get the funding and launch a brand, the exposure part of it is very hard as well. And Liris, this is something that you opened up about a few weeks ago in another interview, talking about the lack of exposure that Black people in the plus size industry get. And of course, we know that, you know, there was that little argument on Twitter, I think last year, where you were talking about being, you know, crowned the Naomi Campbell of plus, and a certain celebrity said that, you know, they didn't know who you were. So we won't mention the specifics of that conversation, but okay, how would you say that you're fighting against this lack of exposure? And then also, how can the rest of the community help you and other Black women with that?
Ooh, yes, we fight against it. I mean, think about it. There was a new book that came out about like the top Black models in fashion. I don't think they had any plus models in it. When you see these shoots about, you know, let's pick the top models, you hardly see a plus model in it. And then if you do, she's a white plus model or she's a Latina plus model. You don't see the Black plus models. Not only that, when you see some of the campaigns with the major retailers, I'm not going to say names, a lot of times over the years, I'm not going to say as of late as much, but over the years, instead of putting a Black plus model and helping to build that person's exposure and visibility within the marketplace, they'll take an actress, they'll take a singer, they'll give a singer a capsule collection, they'll give a actress a capsule collection, and you're like, well, why can't you use the Black model? Why can't? So when those opportunities are taken from the Black plus models, they're not able to build that visibility up. And not only that, and just in mainstream, just like me dealing with my publicist when she's pitching me for certain stuff that you would think Liris is a shoo-in for that. And they'll do a project with a white plus model, but then when my publicist goes to pitch it, it's like, oh, well, you know, we're not sure we're not ready to use her right now, or it's not the fit right now. And it's like, but you just did a whole series with this person. So it's like this ongoing battle of literally just trying to get your brand to be seen period. A lot of people think, well, Liris, you've been around for quite some time. People know who you are. Yeah, people know who I am, but still not enough people still know who I am. I shouldn't have had the Twitter battle with that Black celeb that I had. She should have just said, you know what, girl, my bad, I didn't know about you, but I'm glad I can get to know you now, and let me figure out a way to platform all of this, because this whole industry needs to be exposed about the amazing Black plus models that are out there. But these are the things that continue to happen. I'm praying that our community, meaning the plus size community, and not just the Black audience, but people who have a following who are not people of color, if they could start to speak up and say, why, I love this model, why don't you use this model some more? Or we want to see more diversity too. Because there has been this myth over the years that, well, if we use the Black model, she's not going to really sell the clothes. So wait a minute. So you've been using white models all these years and we've still bought clothes. We have to break down the programming of the old regime and show them that Black plus models are selling clothes anyway. You just need to normalize it. It shouldn't be, and Black influencers too. Yeah. Like it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Why are we normalizing that? Oh, well, the reason why we don't really use them that much is because they don't really sell the product. Well, if you regularly use them instead of using them as a token, then you would normalize it and people would be used to it. So I understand that a lot of things come down to money at the end of the day, but I'm sick of it. It's 2020. It's time for a major change. It's time for us to make our presence known in the biggest way possible. The time is now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can all agree on that point. And Kellie, this is something that you and I talked about recently for a piece I was working on, talking about the disparity between, thin white people in the fashion space and plus Black influencers. And how so often, even someone like you, Kellie, who gets so much press, so much attention, has a huge fan base and has been here for so many years, you still don't get those same brand deals and collaboration opportunities. So can you talk a little about how you have personally been affected by that disparity and, the inner workings of it?
Yeah, so I would say, honestly, yeah, we're all affected by the disparity because, like you said, we all have something that has mass appeal, right? And that's why we've reached the level of successes that we've had. So I particularly get a lot of press, and I'm generally included in stories that aren't about size. So it could be just cool outfits for summer, and it's just like me and Chriselle Lim and some other famous blogger girl in it. And it's not about like, here's Fat Kellie. It's like, here are 3 women wearing the cool shirt of the whatever of the day, right? And that still doesn't always translate to a brand seeing you in a particular way of how to work with you or how to engage. I think that my experience in terms of like the disparity, I will fully say that my experience in working with brands and in how to brand myself have been a huge plus, have been a huge help because in spite of the fact that I wasn't like skyrocketing at the top with like Instagram numbers, not having several 100,000 or whatever, I was still comparatively getting as much work as my larger counterpart, like my friends with larger followings or whatever. And that wasn't really, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have got it. I know that. So like the disparity, me like sort of like figuring out how to navigate that isn't to say that it wasn't there. It was just, I had to be that much more scrappy. I had to know that if I pitched myself to a brand or a brand reached out to me and they were like, well, you're only this, to be able to say like the likelihood of you being reposted on a major media outlet, I'm charging you for that because most of my outfits get reposted. The here are my statistics for, you know, my analytics for how many people actually click things and purchase when I post them. So I had to literally arm myself with like a rebuttal for what I wasn't worth, you know, and prove them wrong, so to speak. And I think the other side of it is, just to piggyback off what Liris said, is, you know, if there's a space for Blackness, there's rarely a space for Blackness and fatness. And so even within our own spaces, whether it is the magazines that are for Black women or the brands that are, you know, aiming at Black women, we as fat Black women are left out of those spaces too.
Yep.
So there's places where you would think it would be an automatic. And all of us here have, really, it's twisted, but we all have these like privileges, whether it's being lighter or being the right shape or being the right hair type or being, you know, having the right body type. Like, we all have a thing that sort of gets us in certain doors, but there are so many women who are just as creative and cool and worthy who don't have that one little thing we have. Like, if a hair company is reaching out to me because they prefer my texture to like something else, or to Gabi because they prefer a lighter complexion, or to Kristine because she has the model body type of a plus woman, or to Liris because she's an actual model and it's not like that big, you know, like there's all these little things that we have privilege in, but then we're still super behind the curve. But then women without those little nuanced things that white people pick up on and accept are just literally left in the dust without us. And even when we're advocating, even when, you know, Gabi talked about, and I could cry, but I won't. Gabi talked about turning down things. I know for 100% certain, and I learned this from her, you know, certain things where you're doing your gut check and you know it's like a little wonky or whatever, but when we're fighting, because we all will bring it up, we like, who else is in this? You know, or those little questions, or I can't be the darkest person or whatever. But really saying no and using the power, like, you don't have it at first, right? You don't have the power to like affect them because you say no and they go, cool, she'll do it. You know what I mean? But once you reach a certain level to where most of us on this panel have, you know, we can all say no to things and the brand might feel affected because they want to know why. They want to be like, well, what do we do? Are we shady? They may ask you questions. That's the other part of what we have to do. And I feel like the example from us could be taken with those Black publications, brands, or whatever. It's like we're gut checking and we're checking ourselves and we're checking brands where white, especially men, are at the helm. But in the spaces where we are supposed to be safe in our Blackness, we need the people inside those brands too to make sure that they're inclusive of every kind of Black person, you know, woman, non-binary, fat, whatever, you know. So thoughts?
Can I interject really quickly?
Yeah, of course.
Just to add on to what Kellie is saying, another way that we can help to create more visibility is we need people behind the scenes. I know a lot of people want to be the model, they want to be the influencer, but we need the writers, we need the casting directors, we need the producers for the photo shoots. We need Black people in those positions. We need the Black marketing directors, because they're gonna have a wider scope and be able to say, well, why don't we use this person? A lot of times I have like a list of clients I have for years wanted to work with, never got the chance to work with. And I just know that it would probably be a lot different if the casting director or the producer that builds the photo shoots or the marketing director was a person of color, because they would try to interject more color within their company. This is why that campaign, Pull Up or Shut Up, it got so much buzz because people are like, who is in your boardroom? Who's working in your office? Because some of the things you're doing is tone deaf, or I can tell that you guys are trying to use a model here and a model there, but we know that you're picking because of your own personal likes. You know, you're not really creating true diversity because you don't have anybody who's really in a position of power behind the scenes in your company.
If I can just add to that really quickly, as the former marketing director, we need more than just the marketing director. We need 2 or 3, because as the person championing this, like, you're always in a fight. You're always in a fight. You're always being difficult. You know, that's the word we use, right? You're always being an agitator. There's been so many times where, you know, I'm the only one in the room at plus size companies that I would do whatever for. I'd be the only plus size person there and the only Black person there. And, you know, I'm like, no, you must use this person. I will never forget a campaign that I worked on where it was a large casting. So it was casting people over and over and over again. And there was 2 people that I swear on everything I suggested every single month, until finally I was like, why not? Like, why not this person? I need you to say it. And they're like, well, you know, just not really a fit, not, you know, and I'm like, but why? Because they're twin in size, in prettiness, in numbers. You are fine with. It's because this person is dark. It is. And so, you know, risking like being fired or risking like causing contention with a senior level person, I've literally had to call people out and say it directly. Like, you don't like them because they're fat, or you don't like them because their belly is big. You are saying no to this person because you said she looks sloppy. No, she doesn't. You just don't like her body. You don't have to want to sleep with this person to cast them. So I would say, if there's any brands on this, it's like, don't do the diversity hire where you hire one person. You need a truly diverse team, so that you're also not putting that person in a position of going to battle every single day to do what's right.
And the same can
making them the token.
Right. And but and to your point, Kellie, the same can be said for us as influencers. Yes, we can and should push back, but at the end of the day, that shouldn't be the job of the Black women who are hired to be talent. Like, I shouldn't also be fighting with you to include other Black people or to talk about who you're casting, like, and have that frustration of being called difficult and hard to work with and all of these things just because your entire team is white, skinny people, and you're trying to hop on a bandwagon of whatever, plus size and body positivity, and without even understanding exactly what the community is about and what you're doing. And so, like, that shouldn't be our job. Unfortunately, we're put in that position to be that person. And, you know, as you said, as we get more and more privilege and more power, like, we can continue to do that. But it really shouldn't be our jobs to be educating these companies on what they're doing wrong.
And even at the top of the game, right? In terms of bloggers, sorry, my nose itches. I have allergies. Sorry. Even at the top of the mountain, right? Like, Gabi, in terms of like visibility, in terms of like length of stay, in terms of opportunity, has done the top stuff, right? But if that person can't tell you anything without being called difficult, like, that's insane. And, you know, then even if we examine our own friend groups, if we examine our own blogger relationships or whatever, there are people who are white passing, non-Black POC, who are, you know, using their voice, and they are called advocates. They are called powerful. They are celebrated for doing the same thing that we do, using their voices in service of us. But when we use our voice in service of ourselves, we're advocating for ourselves, it is not received as such a, like, what a strong and brilliant woman. You know, it's not perceived that way.
Yeah, you make a really great point. I mean, all of you are doing such incredible work and important work, but it isn't easy. It comes with its tough moments. How can our allies speak up for us and push for change without overstepping their boundaries or without centering themselves?
I think
anyone can answer.
Amplifying voices, right? So that's, for me, the big thing is like sharing your platform, giving other people, you know, their props on your platform, whether it's we talked about recently doing, my friends and I talked about recently doing like a stories takeover, like thinking of new ways that you can use your platform to highlight and amplify voices of marginalized people. I think that's one way. I think something else that I know Nicolette is a fan of is inclusion writers, which is like, I will not sign on to this campaign until I see who else you're signing on, and making sure there's diversity included. Again, that's difficult when you don't have power, right? Because like most people at in their careers can say that, and the brand's like, okay, we'll cast somebody else because somebody else is going to say yes, without being quote unquote difficult. So it's hard, and I understand why most people can't do that. Like, I can do that to an extent in the plus size community, but if there's a brand like, you know, a straight size brand or a beauty brand that wants to cast me, they're not going to care if I ask, like, if I say I'm not going to do this unless I make sure you have a diverse cast, like, they'll be like, all right, bye. Like, there's only so much power we have. But that being said, for especially white influencers who do have name recognition and do have power within this industry, I think it's super important to make sure they're only being included and signed on when there are other people of color, and especially Black women, included in the campaigns as well.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that point, I think the overarching theme is that we need unity. We need unified voices to be able to speak to the same thing, because if we continue to advocate for ourselves in the way that we have, we are going to continue to be seen as a certain way. We're going to continue to be seen as difficult, as hard to work with, as all of these things. But if there are echoing voices, which we're seeing just now lately, people realizing that they need to have just as much of a voice as we do, then it's like, oh, okay, we get it now. And it's like, we've been telling you, we've been telling you that we have these experiences, and that we want to make sure that we are not the only ones. And all of the litany of things that we've mentioned on this call, but we need allyship, and we need unified voices, and we need people to speak up just as much as we speak up for ourselves, because otherwise it's not going to be heard, unfortunately.
I have joined forces with different initiatives like the Curvy Collective recently. I'm going to be doing some work with them to change things within the bridal market, which I've been working within the past 5 years, creating diversity as far as size, as far as race, as far as samples. There are a lot of things I'm going to be doing there, but also I'm a part of an initiative called Models for Change Now. And within that, there are a lot of people who are allies as well. So I totally agree with Gabi as far as sharing the mic or sharing your platform, or another thing, diversifying your feed. If you realize that you are mainly seeing, if you're white and you're mainly seeing white people in your feed, you need to follow some other amazing influencers, models, artists, photographers who are also Black. As far as writers, writing stories that platform us, and not just because we're Black, just because we're awesome. You know, we need those stories out there, because like I said, it helps to build the brand awareness that a lot of us are missing. So write our stories, platform us, shout us out in your Insta story. Oh my God, I'm loving seeing Kellie, Liris, Gabi in this new campaign. We need more of it. You know, that's the type of love and support we need, because then when they see that this audience and these people are respecting it and loving it, they respect it more. I hate to say it, if it's just Black people saying, oh my God, I love Liris, it's unfortunately in our society, it's still not enough. It's like you still need white people to say, oh my God, I live for Liris, she's amazing, yes, you need to book her. But that it should become a normal thing. We want that to just be what's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And you all bring up this topic of community and kind of banding together to lift these voices. And I think that's what's so important right now, and such a bottom line that we all need to recognize. And so we only have a few minutes left. I want to hop to some Q&A questions. The first one being is, you know, for a majority of this panel, we talked about what you all have been doing as influencers, models, designers, but what can consumers be doing to hold brands accountable and make their voice heard within this industry? So we're going to open that up to whoever wants to respond.
With their check, with their credit cards, with their money. That's all the brands care about is the money. That's what they care about, the money. So when you pull out and say, you know what, I didn't like how you handled that stuff with the blackface, or that you weren't showing love for Black Lives Matter, or whatever it is. When you pull that money away, then they're like, ooh, we got to make some changes, because money talks.
Yeah.
The number one thing is to, one, take away funds, right? But also you have to engage, right? So when a brand posts a Black girl, there's always less likes. Because white people are scrolling by. If they do not see themselves, and this is like, no disrespect, but if you do not see yourself, you keep scrolling. You assume it's not for you. And it's like, it's my brown face. I'm talking about lipstick. You have lips. We can all do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's really about engaging with Black content is a big way, especially for influencers, how you change the game. And if you aren't seeing your favorite people who you follow, who you stan, who you DM them, you love them, and then there's brands that you never see them with, make the correlation. You know, say in the comments like, oh my God, Gabi will look so good in this dress. Oh wait, this looks just like Miss Kristine, you know, or, you know, I want to see Kelly do blah, 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 or like they are listening. And that, without spending a penny, is so valuable. And then, as Liris said, like when you see something wrong, you have to show them that you are not for it. With your comments, with your shopping trends, like you need to let them know that that will not fly. We've seen it so many times. And I would say, you know, all of us, I think, experience growth through white people sharing us and having these moments where they're like sharing Black creators and creating space for us, like stepping to the side even for a few days. It transformed some of our businesses. Like, you don't understand, you just putting us first for one day out of the month transformed some people's businesses. And so that has to be a regular occurrence, and it can't be just a fad. You have to make space for us as other like white influencers. Even if you have 20K, you dedicating a story, a post, or whatever to a Black influencer who you like can change their business, because you've exposed them to people who, be it through the algorithm, be it through their own bias of like just skipping before they actually looked and go, oh wait, we're very similar. She's funny. We dress the same, like whatever. You have to do that work.
Yeah, I think engagement is super important. Not only one on brand pages, because again, to Liris's point, unfortunately, like we live in a capitalist world. They respond to money. Money talks. And so they see every like and comment as a potential customer. And so when they're spending money on casting a Black model and it gets no comments, that internally says something to them, whether they recognize it or not. And then they don't cast that person again. So when you see a Black model or a Black influencer on their feed, like and comment. When you see a Black influencer working with a brand, it says #ad, comment on that post. Like, you are literally supporting their business by liking and commenting. I know ads aren't fun on Instagram. Everyone hates SponCon, but at the end of the day, it's what's keeping our businesses alive. And if you are able to comment, it shows the brands that it was a good investment for them to pay a Black influencer. So yeah, swipe up when people say swipe up, when Black influencers say swipe up, all that stuff, just engaging. And it doesn't have to be a chore. Like, don't think of it like that, but think of it as a way to support without spending money. And of course, as we talked about, money talks too. So I think the two things are just like calling brands out when need be. So it's not that Black people always have to be the ones calling them out, and then supporting the Black creators and models that you do follow and making sure you follow more.
And what Kelly said, making it be something that reoccurs again and again. Don't let it be a one-time thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I echo all the sentiments, and I really feel like it's been well said enough for me not to add anything else. But I will say that engagement is incredibly important for influencers that can kind of get a little bit of the behind the scenes of what brands use as metrics to gauge on who they work with in the future. It's incredibly important to engage with the brand. If you bought something because of a Black influencer, say that. Say, I bought this dress because of so-and-so and I loved it. You know, that goes a really long way. And just always diversifying your feed. I mean, it's kind of like, it's a chicken and egg problem, because it's like the brands don't put Black women in enough campaigns. So then white people don't feel like Black content, when it shows up in their feed, is for them. And so it just creates this never ending cycle. It's like, if you normalize, like Liris was saying, normalize more Black content creators, more models on your feeds and on your pages, on your websites, on your home pages. Like, I don't understand why these spaces are missing our faces on them, you know? So it's like, if you normalize those things and it's not so much of a surprise when those things happen, then it conditions others to know that this content is created for them too. As Kelly said, we all have lips, we all have bodies, we all have the same things going on. So it's important to showcase more Black influencers, more content creators, more models, so that the cycle doesn't continue, because otherwise it's just going to stay the same.
One small suggestion, because I think that the concept of being actively pursuing content from people who don't look like you is new, right? If you are white, you grew up with always seeing yourself on commercials, in television shows, you were everywhere. And so when someone was different to you, that was when something clicked in your mind, like, oh, there's a different person, versus the Black experience, which is you are the different person. You are often the only person in many spaces, be it work or whatever. So we don't grow up saying like, oh, a commercial just came on, the lady's white, that's not for me. Like, wait, it's just chapstick, I needed that. You know what I mean? We don't have that experience. So if you want to, and this in the quiet of your mind, there's nothing to admit, there's no fault, but if you want to set a reminder, like every Friday, I need to go pursue 5 Black people who I think are interesting. So if you're interested in, outdoors, there's some Black fisher guy, promise you, he's there. You know, you're interested in camping, you're interested in fashion, you're interested in travel, all of the things. You might need to remind yourself to pursue people who don't look like you, just because it hasn't been a natural part of your life, which is not a fault. It's just like you might need a prompt.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're running out of time, but one final question for you all. We've talked about your experiences as people who have been in this space for a while now. But what would be your advice to younger Black women joining the plus size industry now as influencers, designers, or models? What is your advice to them?
Do it. Don't hold back. Do not let any of this discourage you from moving forward, because we need more representation. There is such a lack of diversity. There's a lack of, and I get DMs all the time saying, how I want to do this and I want to do that. And I'm like, nothing's stopping you, boo. Like, go ahead. We need you. We need your voice. We need different ethnicities. We need different locations, demographics, sizes, all those things. So I'm just like, if you are interested in doing it, then you should definitely pursue it, because your voice is needed in this space.
Yeah,
I have to agree. I would say to go after it. Go after it. Know that you're gonna have to definitely work hard, but go after it. I think actually right now is the perfect time to jump out there, because of what has happened in light of Black Lives Matter. A lot of the agencies are actually looking for more diversity with their Black models, as well as the influencer agencies. So this is the time. Get out there, go for it. But when you do it well. Bring your A game.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say the same. I think it's so easy to feel like you're too late. Even I've, for like literally 5 years, been like, oh, I want to get on YouTube. I feel like it's too late. I missed the boat. You know what I mean? And like, that's just literally not true. And every year it keeps growing. And the same goes for influencers. I think we're going to continue to see so much more growth in the space. And things are just now changing in terms of like seeing more diverse faces and bodies. And so if anything, it's like to Liris's point, it's the right time to do it. Even when we were working, so when I was running Prem with Nicolette, we were constantly looking for new faces. And so it's just a matter of like starting. You're not going to be perfect in the beginning. I think a lot of us, including myself, I stopped myself from starting new things because I'm like, oh, I'm not good enough. But you only get good through doing. And if you see my first pictures, they were not good. My first outfit's not good. You got to start somewhere and then you progress from there. So just start, literally use a self-timer in your living room. I'm doing that. Everyone's doing that right now. We're all quarantined. I'm not working with a photographer. People are craving organic, raw content. So there's nothing, to Kristine's point, there's nothing stopping you. I think now's a great time to join.
That's such a beautiful, oh, Kelly, did you have something to say?
I was just going to add that I think all that is incredibly true. And I think with any field, taking your Blackness and your fatness aside, like you have to operate at the highest level that you can operate. You know what I mean? So it's about expressing your creativity, but also understanding that we are working really hard for you because we want you to come after us. We want it to be easier for you. You know, the work that Liris has done, it made it easier for another Black model. The work that Gabi has done, it made it easier for some of us, you know? So it is our job to take a few of these punches because we want you to not get that. You know what I mean? Like we want that for you, but also we are, I think, all pursuing a world where we're not checking off the Black box. So your alternative girl, your punk rock girl, your whatever you are, you know, bring that to the forefront because we are all so different that we want to make Blackness not the diversity, but like true diversity of human, like true diversity of spirit, true diversity of style, be more of the thing. So show up and, you know, we're here waiting for you.
Yeah, I love that piece of advice. This has been such an important and insightful conversation. For people who want to follow you on social, where can they find you? Starting with you, Gabi.
I am on Twitter and Instagram at Gabi Fresh, Gabi Fresh.
I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Liris C. It's in my tag at the bottom. And I'm on Facebook under Liris Crosse. Cross with an E.
I am on Instagram as at Miss Kristine. Kristine spelled with a K. And you can find me everywhere else, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, under Trendy Curvy.
It's me, Kellie B. On Instagram, that's KELLIEB. So it's me, Kellie B. And then you can find me everywhere else from there.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We're so happy we got to have this conversation. I know I learned so much, and I hope everyone in attendance did as well. Of course, this is our first panel of our monthly series, and so you can find more about our upcoming ones on our Instagram at thepowerplus.co. Thank you to all our panelists for joining. This was such a great conversation, and I appreciate you coming so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone.
Yeah, stay healthy.
Thank you.